You know that feeling when you first start learning a new language, that like initial burst of excitement, those early wins where every single word feels like a superpower. But then, well, then the path ahead can start to feel a bit foggy. Like, how far have you actually gotten? What does the next level even look like? And honestly, the big one, how many hours are we really talking about here? That's exactly what we're diving into today. We want to cut through that complexity. Our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the common European framework of reference for languages, the CEFR, and really shine a light on what it takes to move from one level to the next, especially focusing on the hours and the content.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating look, actually. Both the science behind language acquisition and the practical reality for learners. The CEFR, it's much more than just a set of levels.
Yeah.
It's this comprehensive framework. Came from the Council of Europe, designed to foster quality language education and create open-minded, plurilingual citizens. It gives us a common language, really, to talk about what you can do with the language, not just what you know about it.
Right. So whether you're just starting out or maybe feeling stuck in that infamous intermediate plateau, or even aiming for true mastery, well, prepare for some aha moments, hopefully. Let's unpack this.
Okay, so the CEFR basically acts as a guide. It gives practical tools, illustrative descriptors, useful for curriculum stuff, teaching. And it's been updated since it first came out in 2001. To be more user-friendly, expand its vision. It sees the user, the learner, as a social agent, someone who co-constructs meaning through interaction.
And what I find really interesting is how it describes language ability. It moves beyond just the traditional 4 skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing. Instead, it uses these can-do statements. Right. They focus on communicative purpose, which feels much more like how people actually use language, right, in the real world.
Exactly. That's a key point. The framework now organizes things into 4 main categories: reception, production, interaction, and mediation. So for instance, it separates production, that's like a sustained monologue or long-term.
Leaving a talk or something.
Yeah, exactly. From interaction, which is more conversational dialogue, shorter turns, back and forth.
Got it.
And notably, the CEFR is designed to be modality inclusive.
Meaning
its descriptors apply to both spoken languages and sign languages. There are even specific descriptor scales just for signing competences.
Okay, let's talk about what these levels actually mean for you, the learner. The CEFR divides proficiency into basic, independent, and proficient users, right? With the sublevels like A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2.
That's right. And there's even a new pre-A1 level now. Plus, richer descriptions at A1 and the higher C levels too. So let's look at some examples of what you can actually do at each stage, straight from the CEFR descriptors. Think about what this feels like as a learner.
Okay, A levels, basic user. A1, the very beginning. You're using really basic phrases for concrete needs, like introducing yourself, asking where someone lives, talking about people you know. Simple stuff. You can interact simply. If the other person talks slowly and is really prepared to help you out.
Right. Then by A2, you can understand sentences and frequently used expressions, things related to immediate relevance, personal info, shopping, local geography. You can handle simple, routine tasks, describe aspects of your background, your immediate environment, but in simple terms. For example, reading at A2, you can identify specific information in simpler material, like letters, brochures, short news articles describing events.
Okay.
And in conversation, you can interact with reasonable ease in structured situations and short conversations, provided the other person helps if necessary. Yeah. The key there is reasonable ease in structured situations.
Okay, moving into the B levels. This is where you start becoming an independent user, right? B1. You can understand the main points of clear standard input. Familiar stuff like work, school, leisure, and interestingly, you can usually deal with most situations when traveling where the language is spoken. That feels like a big step. You can also produce simple connected text on familiar topics, like writing personal letters, giving news, expressing thoughts on music or film.
Exactly. B1 is often where learners start to feel properly functional. A B1 learner also can reasonably fluently relate straightforward narrative or description as a sequence of points. So giving detailed accounts of experiences, describing feelings, reactions, telling a story.
Right.
Then at B2, well, the jump in complexity is pretty significant here. You can understand the main ideas of complex texts, both concrete and abstract topics, even technical discussions in your field.
Wow, okay.
And interaction gets much smoother. You can interact with a degree of fluency and spontaneity that makes regular interaction with users of the target language quite possible without imposing strain on either party.
That sounds like the goal for many people. No strain on either party.
It is a major milestone, and you're producing clear, detailed text on a wide range of subjects, explaining viewpoints, giving pros and cons. A B2 writer, for example, can produce clear, detailed text on a variety of subjects related to their field of interest, synthesizing and evaluating information and arguments from a number of sources. This is really that transition to independent productive use.
Then we get to the C levels. Proficient user, mastery, C1. This is where you really start mastering it. You can understand demanding, longer texts, recognize implicit meaning, the stuff that's not explicitly said.
The subtext.
You express yourself fluently, spontaneously, almost effortlessly, using the language flexibly for social, academic, professional purposes. For reading, a C1 learner can understand in detail lengthy, complex texts, even if they're not in your specialty, provided they can reread difficult sections.
Yeah, and at C1, that mediation skill we mentioned earlier, it really comes into its own. A C1 learner can be an effective mediator, helping to maintain positive interaction by interpreting different perspectives, managing ambiguity, anticipating misunderstandings.
Sort of like being a diplomat in the language.
And intervening diplomatically, exactly, in order to redirect the conversation. It's quite sophisticated.
And then C2, often called mastery. It sounds like the absolute peak.
That's a really important point to clarify. C2 is not meant to imply native speaker or near-native competence. That's a common misunderstanding. Instead, it describes, let's say it typifies the degree of precision, appropriateness, and ease with the language, which typifies the speech of those who have been highly successful learners.
Okay, so highly successful learners, not necessarily native.
Precisely. At C2, you can understand virtually everything, even abstract, complex, or really colloquial stuff. You can express yourself at length with a natural, effortless flow. You might pause, but only to find the exact right word or phrasing. In writing, a C2 learner can write clear, smoothly flowing text in an appropriate style. Complex letters, reports, articles, summaries, reviews. You can also anticipate and deal effectively with misunderstandings, communication issues, even emotional reactions. It's about command.
Okay, so the million-dollar question then. How long does this all actually take? When we talk about active learning hours, or the time really spent on instruction, exercises, what are the realistic estimates?
Well, it's the classic "it depends" answer. Unfortunately, it varies hugely.
Yeah.
So many factors involved. But we do have estimates. Pearson, for example, gives some useful figures. They often differentiate between fast learners.
Highly motivated, maybe their first language is closer.
Exactly. And slow learners, which represents maybe a more average pace. These are just guides, of course.
Okay, let's look at those guides. For a fast learner, getting to A1, you're about 95 active learning hours, and then from A1 to A2, another 95, so cumulative 190 hours.
Right. But what's really striking is how the time needed for each next level generally increases quite significantly. So A2 to B1 for that fast learner, maybe another 190 hours. That takes the total to 380. Then B1 to B2, another 380 hours. So now we're at 760 hours just to get into B2.
Wow, okay, the jump is real.
It is. And then B2 to C1, we're looking at another 760 hours,
Okay.
which brings the cumulative total for a fast learner to, well, around 1,520 hours.
That is a significant commitment. 1,500 hours. And it really seems to highlight that observation, that it takes more and more time to achieve the next level. I even heard estimates like each level takes roughly as long as all the previous levels combined. Is that?
That trend is very real.
Yeah.
And it brings us right to that common experience, the intermediate plateau.
Oh, the dreaded plateau. I've heard so many learners talk about feeling stuck there. B1, maybe B2. Progress just feels less noticeable, doesn't it? It can be really disheartening.
It's an incredibly common phenomenon. You know, early progress feels crazy fast because the goals are clear, tangible. Buying chocolate, ordering food.
Quick wins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, as the demands for precision, for nuance grow, the number of new words and expressions that you need to internalize to notice any difference grows. Now, you might finish multiple Anki decks, put in the hours, but you don't feel like you're improving as much. You understand a bit better, sure, but maybe not fully understand anything. It's normal. It just requires patience and definitely a shift in approach, especially in the content you use.
So beyond just putting in the hours, what are the critical factors that influence how long it takes? What speeds things up or slows them down?
Yeah, there are many. We can kind of group them into two buckets. Intrinsic linguistic factors. These are about the language itself, how different it is from your native language. And extrinsic learning factors. These are the external things, your environment, your methods.
Okay, let's start with the intrinsic ones. Things inherent to the language, like grammar differences.
Absolutely. That's morphological complexity. Languages with lots of inflections, verb forms, think Russian cases, German declensions, they can be harder. Then orthographic distance, totally different writing systems like Japanese or Arabic, add a whole other layer of cognitive load.
Right. Learning a new script on top of everything else.
Exactly. Monological complexity, unfamiliar sounds, tones, consonant clusters you don't have, syntactic distance, how different the sentence structure is. Subject-verb-object is common in English, but other languages do it differently.
Like Korean or Japanese, maybe.
Precisely. And finally, lexical similarity. How much vocabulary is shared? Learning Dutch, if you speak English, might feel faster than learning, say, Hungarian, just because of those shared roots. Less new vocabulary to learn from scratch.
That makes sense. The language itself presents its own challenges. What about those extrinsic factors, then? The external stuff?
Right, and this is often where learners can make strategic choices. Contact time and curriculum constraints are big ones. If you only have an hour a week, progress will be slow. Obvious but true. Methodology and input quality are crucial. Communicative, task-based approaches generally work better than just rote grammar drills. Is the input authentic? Interesting.
Yeah, quality over just quantity sometimes.
Definitely. Assessment pressure, too much focus on exams can sometimes sideline actual communication practice. Teacher expertise, a good, confident, well-trained teacher makes a huge difference. And then there's the learner themselves, motivation and autonomy. If you're driven, self-regulated, maybe using tech effectively, you'll likely progress faster.
Makes sense.
And maybe the biggest one, exposure beyond the classroom. Immersion is a total game changer. It forces you to use the language constantly. If you're not living in the country, you have to seek out every resource you can find. Create your own immersion. Lastly, societal and parental support. How much is language learning valued around you? That can really impact motivation.
Okay, so given all these factors, and especially that intermediate plateau we talked about, what are the best strategies? What kind of content do you need to engage with to push through, particularly to those higher levels, C1 and C2?
You're right to focus on content, because it's much less about general learning and more about targeted, sophisticated engagement. For reaching C1 and C2, the strategies need to be more refined, more immersive. First, you absolutely have to deepen your vocabulary and idioms massively. This means engaging with advanced texts, academic, literary, technical stuff, not just memorizing words, but seeing idioms used in context, understanding nuance. Native speakers get creative, right?
Yeah, they don't just speak like textbooks.
Not at all. Second, mastering advanced grammar concepts. This isn't about learning lists of rules. It's about precision, appropriateness, understanding complex sentence structures naturally. Third, and this is huge, immerse yourself daily. Actively seek out challenging English content. Watch complex movies without subtitles. Listen to nuanced podcasts. Have real, deep conversations with native speakers. You need to grasp how they express complex ideas, subtle emotions.
So really push your comfort zone with the content.
Constantly. And finally, you have to actively navigate cultural references and context. Language and culture are inseparable. Seek out cultural experiences, travel if you can, but also local events, multimedia. Watch local films, read local authors, discuss current events. That consistent engagement is vital for true C-level proficiency.
It really sounds like breaking past B2 means leaning heavily into real-world content and interaction, more authentic stuff. We see learners on places like Reddit saying exactly that. Watch Netflix, read books, talk with natives. They often say it's more fun than studying verbs anyway.
Chuckles. Well, it often is.
And things like online forums, maybe LinkedIn groups for professionals aiming for C2, great places to practice advanced writing, engage in proper debates.
Absolutely. And we see real-world examples confirming this. Learners like Maria, who came from a monolingual background, she got to C2 through immersion, consistent practice, integrating the language into her life. She apparently even dreams in her second language now.
Wow.
Or Ahmed, who avoided classrooms mostly. Found success through authentic interactions, coffee shops, online communities, just internalizing those nuances through use. And Anika focused heavily on extensive reading, challenging academic material to master texts and lectures for her research assistant role, achieve C2 that way. These stories show it's diverse, it's personal, but that deep, active engagement with rich content is key.
So there you have it, a pretty comprehensive deep dive into what it really takes to climb those CEFR language levels. From the basic can-do statements at A1 right up to that nuanced mastery of C2. It's clearly a journey needing dedication, smart strategies, understanding the language, and yourself as a learner, and all underpinned by those hours and, crucially, the kind of content you engage with.
That's right. Look, there are no real shortcuts, are there? But setting realistic goals, committing to those active learning hours, tailoring it all to your own situation, those intrinsic and extrinsic factors we discussed, that makes all the difference. The goal isn't just ticking off hours, it's about purposefully engaging with the language, leading to real understanding and communication.
And maybe the most intriguing takeaway, for me at least, is that C2 mastery thing. It isn't about becoming a native speaker, it's about achieving this remarkable degree of precision, appropriateness, ease, being a highly successful learner. Which kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does truly mastering a language mean beyond just speaking it fluently? And how does your own personal journey reflect that evolving definition?
It's definitely a thought to mull over as you continue your own language adventure. What really stood out to you from today's deep dive?
We really hope this has given you a clearer, more practical picture of your path ahead. Keep exploring, keep learning, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.